Hello everybody and welcome to this playthrough for a Rookie Division with various wind here for the Heroes of Rock tournament in Golf Clash the game. Video sponsored by Golf Clash and Playdemic. Make sure that you do hit the thumbs up button, also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. You can get more free content about Golf Clash by going to golfclashtommy.com. You will just not find whole guides, you will find golden shots and also other information to improve your game. You can follow the info box on the right hand side, or I recommend you do that for club distance adjustment, elevation adjustment, also what ball and club type I suggest you to play with here in this playthrough. You don't have to follow what I do suggest, but there is always a plan behind it. So let's go to hole number 1. So let's take a look here, and now we do have a headwind. Here I would strongly advise you that even if you do have headwind, we need to push this drive hard. And the reason we do want to do that is because we do want to reach over to get as close to the green possible. So what I'm doing here is that I'm basically centering my target on the fairway above the water. Max overpower, max curl to the right. If I would be having more curl, I would be using more curl. 4.5 bar topspin is perfect. You don't need to use more because then it takes you over to like to be approximately pin high. Have in mind though that if you do have a crosswind or if you do have a tailwind, you need to reduce the topspin a little bit because obviously the ball will fly longer by continuing to using max overpower, which I would like you to do. So I want you to, in regardless what wind we're having, or like what wind direction we're having, I want you to always go max overpower and only, reduce the topspin based on 4.5 bar topspin works in headwind. So 4.5 bar topspin in headwind, approximately 3.5 bar topspin in crosswind, and then 2.5 bar topspin in tailwind. Now we're gonna have a wedge to pin here, and here for those of you that do have the possibility to play with the EB school method, use that. Otherwise, try to estimate the club distance in terms of how, try to estimate your club distance and use 20% elevation. No spin. I never use spin for wedges like this, just because I don't really rely on using a lot of backspin or topspin in certain scenarios. Obviously, if I would be closer to green, I would have used max topspin, but in this case, I'm using no topspin to make sure that I can rely on all the bounces, because it is a little bit of a bumpy green. Adjustment is only 0.9 rings here, not much. Again, it's true club distance, 20% elevation, and then try to hit perfect, and the ball will go in the hole for an eagle. Hole number 1, regardless if you're playing rookie, pro, expert, or master, and honestly, regardless what wind direction you're going to have, this is a must eagle to be able to in somewhat compete for a spot in the weekend round. Let's take a look at hole number 2, which in my opinion is by far the easiest of the par 3s. I'm not saying that this is no par 3 is easy to make a hole in 1 on, but if I'm gonna grade the par 3s we're gonna play of the Nordic Fjords, then this one is miles easier than the other two. White terrain to the left by the rough line, half a bar of left spin to have the ball guideline just to be aligned with the bright, like in between the bright and the dark green square row, going just a little bit to the right of the pin. Medium distance with a 10% over adjustment, which is 2.9 rings. Once that is done, we shall center the ball and try to hit perfect. Very important that you do center the ball and don't have any accidental overpower, underpower, or curl. Perfect ball, bounced nicely on the fairway. Now, when the camera does like this, we know it's going to be very close. Most of the times it's going to be in hole in 1. And we get this one dead center for a lovely hole in 1. Hole number 2, we do have a funnel when we bounce there on green, which means that you do have some fault margin in your adjustment, which you will probably notice when you do play. But finding this spot that I have here in the video is definitely going to be a spot that you can find with whatever wind that you're going to have. And, it's going to be a very good spot to use because it's going to eliminate the glitch roll risk there is on this hole if you are otherwise using the wrong spot. So again, we're using a Marlin ball, getting in hole in 1. That's very rare, but very welcome as well, as then we don't have to spend any of the better balls. So let's take a look, and we start with the drive. And here we're gonna want to position ourselves to be as close to the top of the fairway on the right side. Here there is a lot of value in playing with a power 3 ball minimum. First and foremost, because we do want to go directly over with our drive. Second of all, when it comes to the second shot, it's most definitely gonna be helpful with a lot of power. You can see that I'm using a little bit of topspin and then also side spin to get myself to roll on this fairway pad. Don't get me wrong, this is not a super easy drive, but it's a drive that I believe we have to take if we're gonna give ourselves at least a safe, not safe, but at least an easy route to the eagle. You can obviously go to the very left side of the fairway here and just lay up, but then the second shot is going to be very tough if you do not have the ball or the club for that type of shot. And it would only be a way to get an eagle. Now, second shot, we're going to play with the horizon. And the reason I'm using the horizon is because it has both power and also a decent ball guideline. The accuracy is obviously crap. So that is not something that I'm in love with. But I would say like this, if you do have sniper level 9 or better, then use that one. Otherwise, use the horizon, and as in a worst case scenario, use the big dog or the cataclysm to make sure that you do have the power. I would like us to have at least 107 yards of power. That's why I limit us to play with sniper 9 or better. 10% elevation for the second shot, max distance play. That's the same that we did on the drive, max plus 10. This is not going to be a hole where we're gonna see many albatrosses, but it's always nice, even though we do have a tough par 5, that we find ourselves a chance to actually drop this one for an albatross. We start off by taking a look at the more safer way to play this hole, which gonna require zero risk really. Obviously, if you completely misadjust this shot, then you're gonna be in trouble, but you do have a lot of room for error, so make sure that you do what being told here, then you have no problem at least getting the birdie. 2 bars of backspin, 3 bars of right spin. You can see here that I'm using complete max distance with a power 2 ball with my backbone, trying to aim for the hole. And here comes those of you that do have a Grizzly 7 or better, has a massive advantage over those that do not. And the reason for that is the ball guideline, because now I'm basically just guessing where my ball guideline is ending up, or like where my ball is going to end up due to the crappy ball guideline. Having a better ball guideline obviously gonna help me aim more directly at pin, and I know with a setup like this, I'm never gonna be 100% consistent with my landing spot, and therefore the result will also vary. So here it's a safe way for you to play max plus 20, max side spin to the right, 2 backspin with a backbone. And I would say that if you do have a crosswind or tailwind, this shot is going to be a possibility. But if you do have a headwind, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, as you're going to be in between clubs trying to bounce on that fairway. And therefore I do have the extra option, which is way more technical, but it's definitely gonna be a much better chance to actually get an hole-in-one. Or for those of you that are only looking to get a birdie here, then obviously it's gonna be a super safe birdie. So let's take a look at that option right away. For option number 2, we are going to play a rough bump, and here I'm going to change to play with a marlin, as I do believe that the marlin is the only thing that we need to use here. So we're gonna go up and play with, once again, with a marlin at the rough bump position. It's gonna take a little while until we get there though. Now we got up there. So you can see here that we do have a pretty decent amount of rough, but again, if you're misadjusting completely, or you're just not doing what you're supposed to do, then the water is most definitely going to be in play. So be careful here and don't play this shot if you don't feel comfortable with your adjustment. I'm adjusting for max plus 10 power 0 ball numbers, and you can see here now that I'm using spin. That was 1 right spin and also some top spin to get the ball guideline through the hole. Bounce into the rough there, and then just barely miss that one on the right hand side. I would maybe say that we should be aiming left hand side with this approach, but again, the rough bump is by far the best possibility for us to make an hole-in-one here, and also this is the route that I do believe in headwind it's gonna be the most consistent one to at least get the ball to green, based on, as you can see, me moving around my target like everywhere, and as all the islands were basically just in between club situations, then I feel that the rough bump, unfortunately, is gonna be your play in headwind, regardless if you want it or not. So we start off with the drive, and here we're gonna play on the left side, even though this fairway is much more small than what we do have on the right hand side. But playing to the right side would be a way to just put yourself further away from pin, and then it's gonna be very tough to get the eagle from there. 1 bar of backspin, 2 bars of side spin to the left, and we start very close to max distance of our club. You can see that we do have the ball guideline to be on the right side of the fairway, like the second bounce and forward. Adjustment max plus 10. Once that is done, we will then apply curl. Half a ball of curl to the left. And the reason we do this is, once again, we are aiming for the right side of the fairway as we don't have more side spin. So we need to then compensate with curl. Bounce on the fairway over to the second fairway, trying to get as close to the rough line at top. Obviously, you know, the closer we are to the rough line, the shorter shot we do have for the second shot. But don't push it too hard, because if you do roll into that rough, you cannot reach for the green in 2. Now, second shot, again, the same as on hole number 3. If you do have the sniper level 9 or better, use the sniper. Otherwise, use the horizon if you have that as a possibility due to its very good ball guideline. If that's not a possibility as a worst case scenario, you do play with the big dog or the cataclysm to make sure that you do have the power enough to reach without having to go with overpower for the second shot. Ball guideline short here when we do have tailwind. This is a very tough shot to get the speed correct. And it doesn't matter what division or what club you're playing with, the speed here is very hard to control due to the slight glitchy spots that do come up when you are close to green. No elevation, max distance number. Perfect ball, and you will see the ball bounce on the fairway nicely. Now it's gonna roll up and it's gonna zoom in. Now we know it's gonna be close, but we come in hot. Luckily, the pin was made of steel, so that won't drop for an albatross. Again, though, this is a tough par 5 to get an albatross on, but luckily we do have an adjustment for it. Make sure, though, to back up a little bit more than what I did, so you don't come in that hot, because if I wouldn't be hitting the pin, that ball would definitely roll over the hole. You will see 2 options here. One where we do play with more or less like one of the most common free-to-play balls, which is in this that we will end up to play with a katana. The katana here is lovely due to its 3 side spin. Also, the power 2 will obviously be helpful, especially if you do have a crosswind. If you do have a headwind here, I would strongly advise you to play with a power 3 ball to make sure that you're not going to have to use that much overpower. Aim, so you have the second bounce to be just above the rough. And here to have in mind, I only play with 4.5 bar topspin. If you can use more topspin than that, please do so, because using more topspin is definitely going to help you to reach further on the fairway above the water. Max plus 10, adjustment, half a ball of curl to the right. You can see we bounce on the fairway over to the second fairway and position ourselves up here for a short iron towards the pin. Now, pick the short iron that you feel the most comfortable with. In my book, that is the Thorn. I'm checking where max distance of my club are. I'm checking where minimum distance of my club are. And here you have a decision to make. I go for the dunk. Obviously, that is something that you don't have to do if you don't want to. This is only a play for those of you that feel comfortable with that. If you don't feel comfortable with the dunk, then you do as normal. You bounce on the fairway before the green to roll the ball towards the pin. The beauty with a dunk is that you're taking away the effect after the first bounce, because you're not going to have a first bounce. And with the Thorn, as you can use max backspin, even if you miss the dunk, you will still hit the fairway. You will then backspin to make sure that you still are on green for a simple putt if you do miss with the dunk. Again, it's up to you to play whatever way you want, but the dunk is an option, as is that bounce up towards the pin. 10% elevation is what we're using, and true club distance. For those of you that do have the possibility to play with a power 5 ball, which you can play in for free in the golden shot like a berserker, or obviously if you have invested money in the game, pay close look to the option number 2 for hole number 6. For option number 2, here it is important that you pick the driver that do have the most power possible. Also that you do have tailwind, because if you don't have tailwind, this shot is going to be impossible, because you're going to go into the water every single time. So Berserker ball is the ball. I'm using 4.5 bar topspin and 1 bar of side spin to the left. Stretch out your target so you see the first bounce on the fairway above the water. Once you have found that spot, you're going to adjust max plus 10. Push up to max, make sure that the ball guideline is pointing straight up, otherwise you would push up in an angle, and that's never going to be good. Max overpower, no curl, try to hit perfect. Obviously a great ball, especially to the right, will end up into the rough or sand. Great ball to the left may be safe, but the idea here is to get the ball to be as close to the green as possible, like this. Because from here you're gonna have a short wedge to pin, and I'm picking the skewer because that's the best wedge that I do have. If you do have a wedge that do not have a good ball guideline, meaning that you don't see the rollout, make sure to leave the ball guideline short, because otherwise you will come in hot. And if you come in hot, then you have a risk of hitting the pin and bounce out, or you just roll over the hole. No spin, true distance, 20% elevation if you want to go into those details. But when there is wedges like this that is so short, for me, I just eyeball it, but making sure that I have the ball guideline short so I don't come in too hot. Alright, this is going to be a tough par 3. If you're only looking to play for a very safe birdie, use the Guardian with all its backspin and aim directly at the green. That will not give you a hole-in-one by any means, but it will give you a safe birdie. But if you're looking to go for the hole-in-one, I would recommend to use the fairway pad on the right-hand side to use the long iron that you do have and a ball with side spin. Katana 3 side spin. We're looking to have the ball guideline a little bit short of pin to make sure that we don't come in too hot. And again, as always, when we do play with a long iron with a pretty limited ball guideline, we are going to struggle to know if we are aiming at the pin or not, which obviously is going to cause inconsistencies when it comes to attacking the pin. So I'm not expecting hole-in-ones on this par 3, but I do, however, expect myself to be kind of close all the time and give myself a shot for the hole-in-one. Aim a little bit more to the right than what I do there in the video. Keep the max plus 20 and it will get yourself closer. And if you are lucky, then you can consider yourself happy with an hole-in-one here in hole number 7. Alright, hole number 8, this is a short par 4 where we are attempting to get the ball towards the green area. In headwind, it's definitely going to be more difficult than it would be in crosswind or tailwind. But I would like to say like this. This is all about where you position your second bounce after adding spin with the big topper. I would advise you to play with a power 2 or a power 3 ball in headwind, as here with a power 1 ball we will go in between clubs and we will have to use a little bit of overpower. I don't know if you did pay attention to that, but what I would like you to do is to add the spin. The second bounce in headwind shall always be just before the bunker. If we do have a crosswind, we need to leave at least one ring of a gap between the second bounce and the bunker, and if we do have tailwind, we need to leave approximately 3 rings of gap between the second bounce and the bunker. You may be wondering, why do we go through such trouble when it comes to a shot like that looks pretty easy? It's because when we do have tailwind, we have an extended ball guideline, so prevent us from having the ball into the bunker. We need to compensate for that. That's the same in headwind, as we do then have a compressed ball guideline instead of an extended ball guideline, and need to compensate for that in that way. So hole number 8 could be very easy if you think about those things that I just listed up for you. But it could also be very hard if you don't pay attention to that, because then you will definitely flirt or get the ball into the bunker every single time. Simple wedge for the second shot to lock in the eagle if you do this drive correct. Hole number 9 is going to be a boring par 5, because we will in general just be playing with for an eagle. So here we are lucky to have tailwind on our drive, which is going to make this drive very much easier than it would be if we would be having a headwind, for an example. We play left hand side. We start by using 4.5 bar topspin and 2 bars of right spin. I would recommend to use as much topspin possible. So even if you would be having, let's say you have a big topper here and you play with max topspin, please play with max topspin, because even though I'm using overpower and I'm pushing up to max, you can see how much fairway we do have still on this fairway before we go into the rough. So it's very important that you push the drive as hard as you feel comfortable with, because obviously if you do have a max overpower shot, you are going to hit more great balls, or maybe a good ball, and obviously we don't want to go into the rough. But there is so much room that even with a great ball, you will have no problem to stay on the fairway. And the closer we are to the top rough, the easier the second shot is going to be. Because if we're getting the distance that I'm getting, which is kind of the normal thing, then we will play with a big dog for the second shot, and I'm only playing this one for green. Because I have a bad ball guideline, I do have knowledge of that this green is glitchy, which is gonna come to there. You see, it takes that massive extra speed instead of slowing down, which is definitely not going to be helpful. I played max plus 10 for the second shot, and that's what I recommend you to do. Again, you know, if you have a long drive, you could maybe play with a sniper here, but as in general, play with a wood club that gives you as much power possible, so you make sure that you don't have to overpower or struggle anything, and especially if you do have any headwind or crosswind on the second shot. Again, tough hole, albatross will be super duper rare. Thank you so much everybody for watching this playthrough for Rookie Division with Various Win, playing from front tee here for the Heroes of Rock tournament in Golf Clash the game. Video sponsored by Golf Clash and Playdemic. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and a massive good luck in your Golf Clash game.